Hello everybody, Sparkster1701 here, and we're now into week 3 of Targetmaster Hero Month, and we're going to take a look at probably one of the most famous ones out there, and one of the more difficult ones to find. But today, we're taking a look at Hot Rod. Now, of course, this version of Hot Rod was released in 1987. He would only be available in 1987. He would be totally discontinued in 1988. Of course, the year prior, in 86, we got the original form. And as you can see, the toys are both very similar. The major difference visually is that the original had 2 guns, whereas this one, the Targetmaster, only comes with 1. There's also a bit less stickers on the new one, because as you can see, the leg stickers are gone, whereas they are present on the original. Also, the other big difference to point out to you is down in the feet. The original feet were made of metal, whereas this version's feet are made of plastic. But of course, even though they are going cheap, this Targetmaster version still has rubber tires. So, count your blessings on that. But of course, the other thing to show off to you for other visual comparison is the size of the fists, or at least the holes in them. Let me bring them up close so you can get a good look. As you can see, the one on the left is the original, and he has quite a small hole in his fist, whereas it is considerably bigger there on the Targetmaster to accommodate the larger post. The same would likely be said here on the engines on the back of his head, since the guns can be mounted on the engines when he's in vehicle mode. As you can see, the original one is quite small, whereas the Targetmaster one, it is considerably bigger. So, quite a thing to consider when looking for one of these toys on the loose, on the aftermarket. It's to see what you can see their differences, and that way you can determine which one you want in your collection, or whichever one you're seeking for your collection. Take a look at Targetmaster Hot Rod's articulation, and it's basically the same as it was on the original toy. It's just in the arms. They do move a bit at the shoulder, and he does bend at the elbow, but he can also swivel at the elbow, so he's sort of got his own version of the G.I. Joe swivel arm battle grip. But unfortunately, that's about it, save for being able to bend him at the ankle. So, not a lot going on there. So we'll transform him now, first by removing the gun from his hands. Okay, first thing we want to do is turn him around. We got to rotate the cockpit section like so. The next, we're going to pop the hood free from the waist, rotate it and the head, because we also got to make sure the head rotates as well, so that the engine gets on top, and wiggle this whole unit so the engine rests against the cockpit and levels the hood out. Kind of like that. Down here underneath him, get the arm bag out of the way, rotate the hip piece so it's like that. Then you're going to rotate his arms at the elbow so it brings this little tab here inward, like so. And then you can fold his arms underneath, like that. And down here, fold his feet up all the way around, and then slide the legs up and into position. And snap them into place. And there you have Hot Rod's iconic vehicle mode. And of course, like the original, Firebolt here can be mounted onto the engine. Now, how does it compare to the original? More or less, aside from, like I showed earlier, the size difference on the engine, the hole on the engine, they are pretty well exactly alike. There really wasn't much retooling or anything done to him, so that's a little bit better in comparison to the original toy. It's not like some of the others that, like the earlier one that we showed, Blur, where the retooling was pretty obvious. But, let's see, and how well does he roll? He rolls very good. Very, very good here on this table. So it's kind of that's what you want to see when you roll a toy like that. You want to see some smooth rolling, and man, it doesn't get any better than this, folks. We could do this for hours if we wanted to. But we don't have that kind of patience. Now we'll take a look at Hot Rod's lone accessory this time. This is his sidekick, Firebolt. Firebolt just has the one articulation at his hip. So basically all you do with him is you just bend him at the hip, and he becomes a gun. And that's really about it for him, but Firebolt does have more prominence in the lore, and we'll explain that a little later in the video. Moving right along now, let's take a look at his instructions. And of course, we want to compare them side by side with the original toy's instructions. And immediately, you can tell which one goes with which, as the original Hot Rod came with 2 guns, whereas the Targetmaster only has the 1 gun. Of course, to point out some of the other things, just so you are well aware, my viewers, and in case this is your first time viewing any of my work, up close you can see there is a difference on the side of the tagline. On the 1986 original, it just has more than meets the eye. On the 1987 version, it is more, ellipses, much more than meets the eye. And of course, the other major difference is down here at the bottom of the instruction. The Heroic Autobot and Hot Rod text is considerably larger on the newer set of instructions on the Targetmaster version versus the original. But as you can also see, if I raise it up a little bit like that, you can also notice there's a larger section of black bar on the bottom of the Targetmaster instructions versus the original. Because as you can see, we'll stretch them out here and have them side by side. You can see the Targetmaster set is slightly bigger. So there's your interesting trivia for the day. Open it up and take a look here. You can see the parts list is certainly different, since it just has Firebolt. And then, of course, how to transform him. And mount him. And then now how to transform Hot Rod. Over here to the other side. Just more or less the same. Of course, they show on this that he does have the leg stickers, so apparently this used version, this is one my brother bought. For some reason, the previous owner obviously did not put them on there. And here we get at the back how to use the rub sign, collect your robot points, and read your tech spec. Now to get to the tech spec, of course, for the original one, we still have it on with the Canadian version here on the box. And we have the Targetmaster one loose. And of course, this one's a slightly shade smaller than that one, but of course, the one on the bottom, the original, is dual language, so it's going to be a little bit bigger. But I would imagine it's just like all the others that we've had. And of course, as you can also tell, we've got just the plain sunburst behind Hot Rod on the original toy, whereas on the 1987 Targetmaster, the sunburst is more digital and sprite-like. The pictures are also considerable. The Targetmaster one is considerably darker than the original. And of course, you can also notice the difference in the guns. Plus, the text for the name and faction are in a bigger text than what it is on the original. And the function is done in a bolder text compared to the original. Set that aside here and we'll take a look at it. It's done in red to show he's an Autobot, even says he's an Autobot. It gives his name as Hot Rod and his function is Cavalier. And his motto is, "My actions speak louder than words." All that's still the same from the original. He dreams of great heroics, but he acts like an immature adolescent. Impulsive, friendly, not too good at following orders. Often goes on his own adventures with Firebolt, his electrostatic discharger rifle, who led a quiet, scholarly life as Nebulon's top atomics physics scientist until he became the thrill-seeking Hot Rod's partner. Firebolt is excited, but nervous about the prospect. In vehicle mode, maximum speed 330 miles per hour, range 150 miles per hour. Now, immediately we notice there's a change here. Firebolt becomes an electrostatic discharger rifle. That was the gun used by Silverbolt, an aerial bot. Hot Rod's original guns were photon lasers. Now, immediately we'll go for the tech spec decoder and let's see how his stats translate. It gives his strength as 6, his intelligence is 5, his speed is 6, his endurance is 8, his rank is 5, his courage is 10, his firepower is 7, and his skill is 6. These are drastically different from how they were on the original, as a fair amount of these were scoring very, very high on the original toy. This is due to the fact that it is long believed by many of the fans that Hot Rod's stats on the original toy were a little too powered up, as he didn't really gain that much in his stats when he changed to Rodimus Prime. So this is kind of a reflection that Hasbro may also agree with that notion and decided to weaken him considerably, and more the fans tend to adopt these stats for Hot Rod more, just for the sake of it makes it look like his growth to Rodimus takes on a little more importance. Otherwise, what was the difference between Hot Rod and Rodimus? One other thing to point out about the lore real quick, as I mentioned earlier, was about Firebolt here. The Targetmasters do form some sort of bond with their Nebulon partners, as the fact that since your gun is a sentient being in unto itself, it is able to make decisions for you. So in essence, basically they have a gun that can make the decision as to whether or not to take the shots. Now, while in robot mode, that may not be the best thing to have, but in their vehicle modes, that definitely becomes an asset because of the fact the gun now becomes its own independent turret and can leave the Transformer to handle the driving or flying. And the Targetmaster weapon can act on its own and either try to clear the path or deal with tailgaters, depending on how it's set up and what kind of field of fire it has. So in some ways that does work, but as also mentioned, with enough practice with them, both beings get used to one another and how each one will act. During the Marvel Comics run for the Transformers, Firebolt here was killed in action, and Hot Rod went through a drastic change in his character, not only for the fact that he was grieving the loss of his friend, but also the fact that he had to retrain himself in the use of a regular firearm because he had gotten so used to how Firebolt would and would not act in battle. So it's an interesting arc to hear about. I myself have not read the Marvel Comics in a long time, and I'm having difficulties finding a way to read some of the back issues. But that brings up an interesting bit of contention for the use of the Targetmasters is, as you get used to using a gun that can think for itself, it makes you realize then just how dependent you are on the other character to do his job instead of it being just some mindless apparition that you simply hold, aim, and squeeze the trigger. You have one that can make you think about your actions more, or you get too used to it being able to cover for you while you're trying to run and move to a more strategic position. It's an interesting concept behind it, and it's certainly one that more of the modern media with the Transformers should probably explore a little bit more. So if there's anybody from IDW or Paramount paying attention to these videos, this is something you might want to look into. Now we get down to my final thoughts. What do I think of the Targetmaster version of Hot Rod? I think it's a bit of an improvement over the original. Stat-wise, the Targetmaster stats work out a little bit better than they did on the original toy. The original toy was way too powerful. It almost made transforming him into Rodimus sort of pointless, really. Because he really didn't gain anything on his vital statistics that he didn't already have. All it did was give him a different alternate mode and make him look like an older Transformer. But in the case for this one's a little bit better. Due to the fact they've toned him down. They've downgraded him from 2 guns to 1, and, well, that can be debated amongst the fans. It's kind of your preference, really, on whether or not he was better off with 2 guns or 1. This one, I think it's okay. I mean, doesn't allow him to take full advantage of the swivel arm grip that he has, because I could see many people going like this with it, you know, bend the arms out to the sides, and there you go, you got some fancy dual gun wielding there going on. Some people like that. Me, myself, I'm not too keen on it, but That's, again, one man's opinion. But I think the new one definitely deserves some credit. The lack of the metal parts on the newer one, that's not a big deal. I mean, it was only in the feet anyways, so kind of almost defeated the purpose as it was. So all in all, I like this version of Hot Rod more than the original. And I'm going to go so far as to say that this version of Hot Rod is definitely a top-tier toy. Since you got slight improvement on the toy, major improvement on the stats, and backed up by the lore that's happened in the Marvel Comics, while that certainly hasn't carried over into any other places, it's certainly more food for thought and something more worthwhile to debate about amongst the fans. And it's certainly better of a debate than whether or not Michael Bay has hurt the franchise. Here's a hint. Yes! And that concludes my review of the Targetmaster version of Hot Rod, the Generation 1 Autobot Cavalier. If you like the video, please leave a thumbs up here on YouTube. Don't forget as well, hit that subscribe button down below and join up within our ranks. Also, please consider sharing your thoughts for Hot Rod in the comments section down below. This is Sparkster1701 saying I will catch you all later.